I'm James Clifton, I'm the CEO of TMP, and I'm delighted to be joined by some of our esteemed clients, and we've got a wonderful panel to have a discussion. But first, could I ask you, Nathalie, to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Nathalie Dorricott. I'm Head of Growth Marketing for EMEA and LATAM at Palo Alto Networks.
I'm Tricia Stinton. I'm the CMO for Cloud Infrastructure Services at Capgemini.
Hi, I'm Claire-Louise Green, and I run enterprise marketing for Adobe across EMEA.
Thank you all, and thank you very much for giving your time for us today. As you know, I sort of joined what was the marketing practice, now rebranded as TMP, in January of this year. And often when you start a new role, you get a little bit of time just to sort of take a bit of an audit and assessment of the industry that you're joining and basically your company's role within it. And sort of when I did that, you could just sort of see that there was a lot going on. You know, fragmented systems, obviously geopolitical instability, economic uncertainty. And it just felt, as a marketeer, but also actually as a human being, that it was just chaotic. And there, as I sort of say, a lot going on, but it was sort of in a bit of unorganised chaos. Is that a fair assessment? Is that something that you felt within your organisation or you as an individual?
Yeah, I think, obviously, my team is very focused on driving demand, primarily, via paid media. The way, platforms, MarTech have grown, over the last few years, and the fact that AI is obviously accelerating this, is making it very challenging, for teams to get their head around, how to incorporate all of this into what we do.
So at Adobe, personalization at scale is very strong focus point for us. And there is a lot of chaos around how to serve that up with speed, efficiency, return on investment is very big topics. And most of the CMOs, including myself, talking to is all about how do you set your organization up for success. The amount of content you need to produce to the different audiences is getting, like you said, prolific now. But also, how do you do that without adding more and more marketeers to your organization?
Going back to the COVID times, that really changed the way that marketers engaged with customers. And I think actually post-COVID, with AI and all the new technology coming forward, has changed it considerably again. And I think we're perhaps all still trying to get to grips with that. But prior to that, it was always about how to reach that audience in a way that is relevant to them and their situation. And I don't think that's really gone away.
But if we just sort of go back to that sort of notion of chaos, and obviously, that as a theme, the antidote to chaos is coherence. And that's not just the domain of the marketeers, because if you're going to, random acts into coherent customer journeys, if you're moving from silos to something which is a bit more holistic as an organizational structure, you really need the whole business to come with you. How's that manifesting itself, and how are you tackling that within your organisations?
So it's probably one of the biggest challenges, particularly in a large global organisation where, in my case, you have people in global roles, you have people in country roles, not just in marketing, but in sales, also in, the portfolio of the product lines as well. And so trying to bring together that coherence in strategy, in marketing approach, in sales go-to-market is definitely something that we're trying to get to grips with. And having a single go-to-market, which as someone who sits in a business unit within a large organisation, making sure that's tied back to the overarching group brand message, the overarching, group positioning as well is really important. And I think it's just, in my case, certainly, it's an ongoing journey, trying to bring all of those pieces together.
Being clear on what your North Stars are, not only, from a marketing perspective, but also how it relates back to the overall business, strategy is super clear. That needs to, come from the top and be really clearly, communicated down to the teams. So it's nothing new in terms of having these models where there's a strong global directive, but obviously you have also to appreciate that then everybody has got to rally behind the goals, but then do it in a way that makes sense for the markets that they're going after.
I see a closer partnership between, I don't know if you're feeling like this, between sales and marketing. Marketing's always been pivotal point of the organisation, but I'd say access to strategy and leaning on marketing for thought leadership, adoption of AI into reaching to the customer, and within Adobe, the customer is the centre of our universe, and then how do we collectively work around each of our roles and partner together. So I'd say marketing has even more of a strategy play, sitting right front and centre of what we're doing, the vision, the brand awareness, and the reliance on marketing. So you say about chaos and more complexity, more emphasis on marketing to be a demand partner, to open up new channels, to really get across the language of the competition is ever more present. Yeah. So I'd say, really key to work together closely on how we're going to do that partnership is really important.
In terms of, obviously we're talking a lot about coherence as a solution to that chaos, and we're not doing it out of the goodness of our hearts. We're doing it because it delivers results, and we know that it delivers results. Recent studies from Forrester are showing that if you get your sales, your data and your execution aligned, you've got 50% greater efficiency. So obviously you are generating more with less, and we know that that's often a phrase that we hear a lot of. But how are you, and indeed is it becoming more of an issue that you need to demonstrate the value of marketing, because I know budgets are under pressure, and obviously marketing is often seen as a cost centre. So how are you demonstrating the value of what we're talking about and your strive for a coherent approach?
So I think in my case there are different metrics that we look at depending on the activity. I think ultimately the goal is around driving demand. So for me it's really about not about MQLs, but actually has our activity contributed to the pipeline in some meaningful way, and has that translated into revenue at the end of it? That's the ultimate marker for me in terms of success. Some of those other metrics that we look at is how are we benchmarking against competitors in terms of that perception within our target audience as well. So I think there are lots of different metrics depending on actually what you are doing. But I think part of your role as a CMO is really then to kind of really educate the business on why some of those softer metrics are also important, because they tell the story of what actually leads up to that pipeline, to that revenue, and some of the things that actually helps to drive that outcome, and why it's important to do some of the things that perhaps may be considered a little bit fluffy, a little bit irrelevant, because they are perhaps a little bit more intangible.
And Nathalie, I know in your organisation there's been a move away from the definition of success, from MQLs, buyer groups are obviously emerging, and that. So is it a constant education of actually the contribution from the individual components? I
recently was at a conference where there was the notion of having to be a commercial marketeer. And always, bringing back everything we do to indeed, what kind of impact are we driving to the business, for the business, and be able to talk to our stakeholders in their language, as opposed to, again, talk about MQLs and things that, And I was actually quite surprised to hear this being a topic, because I think it's, absolutely critical. Yeah. You have got to make sure that you relate everything you do back to what kind of business impact it has. We know that 95% of our buyers are not in market at any point, So this whole notion of being able to also have softer metrics where you can show that you are staying in front of these potential future buyers, making sure your brand is front of mind, and that you'll make it on the what we call the day one list when they are looking for, obviously new solutions, is absolutely critical.
Now, again, as brand marketeers, we're responsible for the front end of the funnel. So that engagement and the way you engage is key, and making sure that it's probably more of a branded relationship where they understand your values and how you do business. Is that seen as something more important in this fight for those B2B buyers?
So we are doing a lot more in sports marketing right now, and really to delight the fans through fan engagement. But also you talked about, James, how, in terms of the chaos, how do you navigate your way through and have brand certainty, and using AI, commercially safe brand templates across the organisation, so you can still have the creativity, the marketing and AI piece and story to tell, but you have the safety within the teams knowing what the parameters are and the limitations. And that's been a big topic for a lot of companies that we're talking to, is how do they scale, how do they really engage with all the fans, or even consumers create their own, but keep within the brand guidelines. So that's a big opportunity, and commercially something that we really want to follow up on.
Your brand is your biggest asset at the end of the day. So, you have, to make sure that you nurture it and, you take it to where you want it to go. And again, back to the old cliche that behind every B2B buyer, there is a consumer.
Because always before, again, that brand was seen as something which was a nice to have rather than a fundamental to start off the relationship in the right way.
I think one of the key things, though, is making sure that people understand that you have to continually reinforce that. You can't just assume that everybody knows our brand, so the door will open. You have to keep reinforcing that with the target audience, because you have a lot of cases where customers will buy something from you and they know you for that particular area or space that they've purchased, but you may want to have a breadth of services or products that actually you want to introduce into that customer. And also we all, I think, work in companies that operate in a very busy marketplace and with very strong competitors. So at the end of the day, your customer is always in a position where there are 3, 4, 5 other companies that does what you do. So you've got to really continue to show them what makes you special. Why should they go with you?
We've spoken a lot, obviously, as we would expect to. Every conversation would do at the minute about AI. And I was reading actually an interesting stat this morning that there is 450 billion of private investment money that has been sourced by the tech sector alone. More of a personal question as senior marketeers, are you seeing real world benefits, or is it actually a burden from that investment and that acceleration that, you can now do more for less? And actually it's not quite there yet, but there is an expectation, as I say, that it should be.
100%. I'd say from what I'm doing with my team, and it's really important to train the team and train the wider business on where there are efficiencies, but at the same time, we're not replacing the individuals. We're just working in partnership and taking out some of the laborious jobs, which all of us are quite happy to take away from your day job. But it's really about communicating, and we talked earlier about communicating with your stakeholders and across the business where it brings the lift, but it doesn't take over.
This is when the penny really dropped for me. I think there was a phrase around like, don't use AI as a tool, as a crutch, but as a thinking partner. And that really resonated, because I think that most of the time we think of AI as a way to get things done faster. But now I can see certainly my immediate team using it really as a true thinking, and I would almost say a strategic partner. And to me, this is where the power of AI really comes into its own, when it almost puts like, a fifth person at the table to kind of challenge, the way you're looking at things.
So TMP has for over 20 years been a B2B specialist. We were built as a B2B agency. We're not a generalist agency that does a bit of B2B. And I'm hoping the answer is yes, but do you, in these chaotic times, benefit from working with specialist partners, not just TMP, rather than those generalists? Nathalie, if I can come to you first.
I think, again, it's a question of balance, first of all. But no, for us, but even in my previous roles, I've always purposely worked with, B2B specialist agencies.
You need your specialist partners. It's getting more, as we talked about at the beginning, chaotic, harder. So you really need to make sure your partnerships are stronger. If anything, more leaning into the partnerships around speciality, subject matter experts, vertical industries, and how to reach the audience in the way they want to be reached.
No, I think it's really important to have specialist partners, because I think there is a lot that you have experience and visibility of, which we in our day-to-day, going 200 miles an hour, do not always get an opportunity to see or experience, and things that you can bring in to help us to be much more effective in our ability to target, our audience. And we haven't touched on it in this conversation, but I think there is such a proliferation of marketing technology out there that we do not necessarily always have access to all the things that we need. And I think your ability to help us really delve into the metrics and, the analytics and stats and data behind some of the activities that you're supporting us with is also really useful for me as a partner.
Brilliant. Great. Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for your contribution. I really enjoyed the discussion and just really understanding your journey from chaos to coherence. But obviously, it is a journey. We all know that, and we're very proud to partner with you on it. So thank you again for all your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.